Cathy Newland goes about her routine as usual. She works at the flower shop, has breakfast at the restaurant across the street, and then goes to yoga class. All the while, a strange man named Robert Lewis follows her. While Cathy is practicing yoga, Lewis waits outside. He checks her car, and then takes out a gun, a plastic bag, a zipper, and a newspaper from the trunk. After throwing those things on the front seat of the car, he keeps waiting. He receives a call from the maid Arundel, confirming that everything is going smoothly for tonight. After the yoga class, Cathy chats with another woman in the dressing room, and clearly disagrees when this woman implies that she wants to cheat on her husband. Then she goes to the parking lot, ready to go home. But as soon as she gets in the car, Lewis pounces on her. He covers her head with a plastic bag, throws her to the floor, and tries to suffocate her. But Cathy manages to push him away and get the bag off. She yells for help, but the only person nearby is wearing headphones and doesn't hear her. This gives Lewis another chance to grab her. He tells her that if she makes a sound again, he will kill her. Then he covers her mouth with tape and ties her wrists and ankles with a zipper. Cathy is left on the floor while Lewis returns to his car. He waits for the car next to Cathy to leave, then takes over the parking spot. There, he picks up Cathy, locks her in the trunk, and then drives away. On the way to his house, a police car stops next to him at a traffic light, but he remains calm and manages to avoid arousing suspicion. A few minutes later, when he gets home, the garage door gets stuck halfway, so he has to lift it up himself and prop it open with a broom. Lewis takes time to turn the car around and back into the garage, so the trunk goes in first. He lifts Cathy out of the trunk, drags her through the house, leaving a trail of blood from her bleeding foot on the floor. Cathy is taken to a 10 by 10 seller's place where Lewis locks it, hiding it behind a false wall and a table with a vase on it. As Cathy struggles to break free, Lewis puts some food in the oven, then goes to his car to pack his things into a bag. Then he visits Cathy. He tells her that the walls are soundproof, so shouting won't help. He then tells her that he will remove the tapes so she can tell him her name. After Cathy nods in understanding, Lewis removes the tape, but she just starts screaming again, so he leads her and goes to his office. He checks his computer, confirming that everything in the basement has been recorded, then mutes the sound. He then starts cleaning the blood on the floor. Cathy manages to stand up and starts banging on the door with her whole body, but it's no use, nor is kicking the panels. So she decides to try something else. When she notices that the room has a vent, she gets as close as possible to the vent and tries to yell for help. But the house is in a remote area, so no one can hear her. While listening to an old news recording, Lewis loads his gun and goes to see Cathy again. The recording mentions that the case is being retried when evidence of 3 deaths emerges. She begs him not to touch her and offers him her savings of $50,000. Lewis points out that's a lot of money for someone in her line of work, but he doesn't want her money. He wants her to tell him her name. She replies Cathy Newland, which disappoints him and sends him back to the kitchen. Lewis rummages through Cathy's bag, but doesn't find anything useful. So he goes back to watching the news report. This time, the reporter says the evidence is insufficient to prove unnatural death. So the case is closed again, and the family plans to contest this decision. When Lewis goes back to cook, Cathy tries her best to contort her body and manages to get her bound hands in front of her. When Lewis goes to invite Cathy for lunch, Cathy is waiting for him behind the door, ready to attack him. She punches him down to the floor and kicks him as she leaves the room. Once outside, she grabs a vase from the table and smashes it over his head. Cathy drags herself to Lewis's office, trying to call the police with the landline, but Lewis appears and fires his gun. As he approaches, she picks up a paperweight from the table and hits him with it, knocking him unconscious on the floor. Seconds later, she goes to the kitchen, finds her cell phone behind her, but there's no signal. So she finds a knife in a drawer, cuts the bandages off her ankles, and tries to leave the house. Unfortunately, all the doors are locked. When Lewis wakes up, Cathy asks him how he knew about her job, but his only response is to sit at the table and invite her to have lunch with him. He asks her name again as he eats. She answers Cathy Newland. Lewis reminds her that he has a gun, and guns beat knives. So Cathy agrees to sit at the table, but she doesn't touch the food. He points out that if he wanted her dead, he could have killed her long ago. He asks her name again. Cathy gives him the same answer, which angers him, leading him to throw the plate at her face. As Lewis walks towards her with the gun, they both leave the table. Cathy knocks it out of his hand and tries to punch him. Lewis responds by pushing her onto the kitchen counter. Cathy bites him, getting him off her. Then she chokes him with the wrists tied around her neck. However, merely making him unconscious isn't enough. So when she tries to escape, he knocks her down with a punch and takes her back to the basement. When he returns to the kitchen, his maid Alondra is there. She is there because he never told her whether he needs her today. Lewis tells her he doesn't need her and let her go. But Alondra insists on cleaning up the broken dishes and taking care of his wound. Desperate, Lewis tells her that he just has one of those days, and tries to get her to leave again. Alondra hesitates but accepts, promising to return the next day with her daughter, who is currently spending the night. Lewis cleans up the aftermath, puts the flowers in a new vase, and washes the bloody knife. Then he checks on Cathy, applying butterfly bandages to her wounds. Afterward, he takes a bath, taking care of his own wounds. Then, he finishes his lunch in front of the TV, watching more old news recordings about Charleston 3, the case of 3 patients at Charleston Angel Hospital dying under mysterious circumstances. Meanwhile, Cathy retrieves her cell phone from a hidden spot in her pants. But there's no signal. When she finds one of the tiles is cracked, she keeps it. So she starts working on getting the pieces off the floor. Lewis comes to visit Cathy again, bringing a chair this time. He begins asking her questions about her personal life, her name, her birthday, her hometown, number of siblings, and her relationship with the church. Cathy answers all the questions. But Lewis is not satisfied. He tells her that he has been tracking her for months. He knows all the lies she just told him. So he keeps pressuring her, demanding the correct information. Cathy finally changes her story as he fires a shot at the wall. Her real name is Nathalie Ann Stevens. She grew up with her twin sister Cathy, who committed suicide when their father, a football team doctor, left their mom for a cheerleader. Nathalie didn't give up. She continued to study nursing like her mom. Now she has admitted what he wants. Lewis tells her that she must want to know why he kidnapped her, but he only says that she might already know before he leaves the room again and bring the chair with him. Once the door closes, both Cathy and Lewis break down emotionally. When Lewis returns to the living room to watch old videos of him and his family, Nathalie starts working on the broken tiles again. She makes no progress there, so she takes out her cell phone again and places it on the air vent. Finally, she manages to get some signal, dials 911, and tries to seek help, which proves to be difficult as the signal is weak. Meanwhile, Lewis spots a cell phone in the video and realizes that she brought her phone to the basement. He rushes in right after she hides it, but he takes it out of her pants and destroys it, leaving the broken parts on the floor. Another interrogation begins. Nathalie admits that she used to work at Angel Hospital. Lewis asks her about the patients who mysteriously died under her care, including his wife Alana. Nathalie reminds him that there was a trial. All nurses were acquitted. She says she left the town just because she needed a new start. Lewis doesn't believe it. He tells her all the clues that make him suspicious. A man named John Lamptey died of organ failure the month before he went through health insurance. Alana lost her never-taken-off wedding ring. She was drunk, which is strange because she doesn't drink much, and her body was filled with GHB, a drug commonly used to incapacitate abuse victims. Lewis not only thinks Nathalie did it, he absolutely knows, so he tells her that if she doesn't confess, she will die. After checking his computer, Lewis goes back to watch old family videos. His computer still records every noise in the basement. Seeing his deceased wife on the screen upsets him. So he rushes back to the seller's place, puts the gun to Nathalie's head. Nathalie finally confesses. She and her sister grew up in a religious environment that adheres to the teachings of the Bible. When Cathy discovers that their father is sleeping with her best friend, she confronts him. So he abandons them, causing them shame. The family becomes outcasts in the town because of something that isn't their fault. They are being punished for the sins of their father, which is what drives Cathy to suicide. Nathalie finds her in the barn, hanging from the drafter. This is why Nathalie dedicates her life to serving people. Patients always believe she will tell them their secrets, even the bad ones. Her 3 victims all do something wrong. John Lamptey has 2 wives. Jane Spencer falsely tells the police that her husband beats her for divorce money, and Alana is continually cheating on her husband. Lewis doesn't believe it, but Nathalie explains all the clues behind the case. That's why Alana is found drunk in the bar of a hotel, all dressed up and without her wedding ring. Her lover has even visited her in the hospital. Nathalie admits she killed the Charleston 3 because they are sinners, and Lewis, after learning of his wife's secret, leaves the basement unsettled. When he returns to the living room to watch another video, he starts to believe Nathalie. Alana acts awkwardly while ignoring phone calls. This confirmation causes Lewis to break down. He starts throwing things around the house, shouting in anger. Then he gets in the car and leaves the house. Nathalie finds her phone pieces and realizes she can use it as a tool, eventually releasing the tile fragments from the floor. Lewis arrives at the lake he and his wife often goes to. 2 policemen approach him, asking about his wounds and address because they are investigating a call that describes a car like his. After checking the license in the trunk of his car, they let him go and Lewis decides to go home. He walks into the basement, squats in front of Nathalie, and tells her that Nathalie had no right to kill his wife before he has a chance to talk to her. He also demands that Nathalie turn herself in. Nathalie stabs his shoulder with a floor shard. Then she starts kicking him as she tells him she's Cathy now, and she won't let him ruin her new happy life. Lewis manages to remove the shard from his shoulder, but Nedley lands a punch before running out of the room. She looks for a gun in the kitchen, but doesn't find one. So she grabs a knife and goes back to the basement. Lewis waits for her and tries to lock her in the house again. Nedley puts her hand at the doorway to stop it. They struggle for a bit, and then Lewis flees to the kitchen, where he finds his gun on the floor. Nedley arrives as he picks it up, knocks it out of his hand, and starts fighting him. Eventually, she successfully subdues him, steals the gun, and points it at him. Just then, they are interrupted by Alondra, who is entering the house with Lewis's daughter, Summer. Nedley shoots Alondra, and then catches Summer trying to find her father. She points the gun in her head, telling him that she is not his child. But this doesn't matter to Lewis. He tells her she doesn't need to turn herself in, and he won't tell anyone anything if she doesn't hurt his daughter. Nedley does not accept this because the police will trace her phone anyway, so Lewis tells her he has recorded everything she has said. This distracts Nedley, and Summer seizes the opportunity to bite her arm and escape. Lewis pounces on Nedley, throwing her to the floor, and strangles her until he knocks her down. Or so he thinks. Just a few steps away from her, Nedley stands up again, so Lewis shoots her before leaving to find his daughter. He finds Summer hiding in the basement and takes her away. They stop in the office to pick up the USB stick with the recording, and Summer notices that Nedley is gone, so Lewis rushes her into the garage. He is getting Summer into the car as Nedley finds him and tries to shoot him, but the gun is out of ammo, so they start fighting again as Summer leaves the car. Nedley uses various gardening tools to beat Lewis until she subdues him, and places a pitchfork at his chest, intending to kill him. Lewis grabs the pitchfork to prevent it from stabbing, pushing until he hits Nedley with the pitchfork, causing her to fall backward onto the broom he used earlier to open the garage door. Without the broom's support, the door falls on her, trapping her body as she loses consciousness. The movie ends with Lewis embracing Summer, apologizing to her, and calling her his child as the police arrive. If you enjoy this video, please give a like and subscribe our channel. Thanks for watching.